Welcome again to another episode of Wampa Radio. It is episode number 30. This is a podcast focusing on Star Wars Unlimited, the card game, but all Star Wars card games, all Star Wars media seems to seep its way into the program. I have returned. Charmer, it's nice to have you. It's nice to have you. I mean, you've been here. I don't know what else to say. For those wondering, I was on a mental health recovery absence, as it were. Holidays are not exactly my favorite time of year. In fact, quite the opposite. So I disappeared for several weeks to sort of just recover. But we left you with the best we could, which is Doa and Joe.
Which was really just Doa, because full disclosure, holidays are the worst time of year for me as well, specifically these holidays, Christmas, New Year, and many years of therapy has only taken the edge off. I'll put it that way.
Oh, there was an edge. There was definitely some edging going on. Well, that's the way that came out completely wrong. Whoops. I meant to say.
Anyway,
go.
Not here this week.
Go.
Emergency pack.
Now's the time for sure.
Yeah, we're so close to that though, and we're going to talk quite a bit about opening packs, because in today's episode we get to cover the drafting experience. So Fantasy Flight Games, FFG, had a live stream today where they went over how you draft, and much of what I anticipated was in there, but there were some surprises. They also posted an article about sealed rules and a whole number of things. So we actually have a jam-packed episode. That means we need to kind of speed through some of the content, including the Wampa Cave Poll of the Week.
So the cave poll this week it's a little late, as always. We are just... No one holds our feet to the fire for these things, so we'll put them out when we get them out. But ultimately, this time it is, what should Anakin's New Year's resolution be? We have upgrade C-3PO. Now, this is the fun part about this, because for a little slave boy working in Watto's shop in his spare time to build a functional, and I say functional, a working protocol droid to help his mom, phenomenal. Good for you. That's incredible.
Yeah.
What I really wished Anakin would have done was let the damn droid read the Sith language without having to go see Babu Freak. Now, that said, Charmer, we are going to get to some Babu Freak drama down the road.
Yeah, we will. I also, just as a side note, personally wish that was something that they explored further with Anakin, whether it was during Clone Wars or whatever. It's our first introduction is that he's like this technical genius for a kid building protocol droids as a slave on a fringe planet. And then he just, like, other than his lightsaber, never builds anything again. And I will say at times I wish that, whether it was during Clone Wars or something else, he would have just had some cool contraption that he was like, oh yeah, I was just doing this in my spare time. It reminds me of home.
You forget he built the Empire.
Well, yeah.
He built an aura of fear and terror amidst all those who oppose the ultimate power in the universe. Next, we've got read more Darth Plagueis. Yeah, I mean, we've all heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Yeah, we all have that New Year's resolution where we're like, I'm going to read more books this year. And for Anakin, it's just more Darth Plagueis.
I was hoping to do, at my peak, I was doing about maybe a book every month. And in my spare time, it wasn't like I didn't have kind of the same type of motivation as others did. Like, I want to do one a week and go crazy and I have a goal. To me, it was just, I wanted to read 1 or 2 chapters a day of a book and see where it led me. Some days were more, some days were less. Ultimately, we did it. We did like 12 or 14 books like in 2022 or something. Last year, different story. This year, not even going to attempt it. But I do have friends who are like, I read 72 books last year. I'm like, oh, interesting. Great. How many of those were like Curious George and Thee? But we don't know. Still, I do highly recommend. I've read a lot of Star Wars books, canon and legends, and Darth Plagueis by James Luceno is a top 5 for me all time of Star Wars books that I've read, for sure. Read it.
It's a good one.
We have, I changed the wording on this one. It was a little bit more reckless and aggression, but reconcile with sand. Because frankly, he just hates it. It gets everywhere. It's coarse. It's nasty. And his whole life was, you and I are getting ready to go on a little cruise in the next couple days.
That's right.
I am deathly terrified of the ocean, of the open ocean, and the ocean in general. Sand, beaches, all that stuff scares the hell out of me. Frankly, the ocean to me is just like outer space. There are aliens in it that want to eat me. I'm not interested.
I think the deep ocean is scarier than outer space because space is just nothingness, and the deep ocean has stuff that wants to eat me and a bunch of nothingness. Like every time that they're like, hey, we found this new thing on the bottom of the ocean, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's nightmare fuel. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with that.
These things, honest to God, are like one or two evolution cycles away from making it to land and ruining the entire, like, our dominance as a human species. Like anglerfish and all these deep sea, it's like, yeah, this thing, it's just funny because it's like you have this little blob with teeth and a glowing little nubbin on the top of its head. And then you have this like ocean gate or like that. One of them survives the intense pressures and horrible environment that is the deep sea, and the other one was history.
It's funny because I had the same thing that you did. I always thought of anglerfish as being small, and most of them are like a foot in size, but they can get to like a meter. They can get to like 3.5 feet or something like that, and that is not small, and they are terrifying.
Not only that, Charmer, but you do know the rule that there is always a bigger fish.
A bigger fish, right?
Yeah. So wait, because eventually some of them will be like, wait a second, I could breathe on land? I've seen videos, dude, of like fish crossing the desert. It's like, and it's just David Attenborough saying things like, this fish can traverse the desert for 3 days before it needs more water. It's like, that is a risky freaking fish. You want to talk about the biggest balls and the most chutzpah out there in the animal kingdom? It's the fish amidst the desert being like, screw it, let's go. Yeah, but what if you run out of space? Whatever, man, let's go. Like, that's what's happening.
If you've ever owned an aquarium, you've had that one fish that just jumped out on its own, and then you find it dead 2 weeks later, dry. And I think there's something wired about all fish that they want to be on land, and that is also terrifying.
It's like evolution, man.
One thing is someday Pacific Rim will just be a reality. That's what we all have to plan for.
It's the ghost of Darwin just in their ear being like, do it. Just do it, man. Just do it. Just jump. Just go. Just go. You're like easily about 500,000 years away from growing legs, dude. But just do it. Start now. Do it.
Yeah, instead of having Force ghosts that like help you out, instead you get Sith ghosts that are just like, do it.
Yeah.
It's just Palpatine, do it.
That would be sweet. Last one is become a real Jedi Master, because he has never attained the rank of Master. And I think that's what possibly threw him off. But what did you vote for, Charmer?
I voted become a real Jedi Master. And I feel like that was a very good goal, right? It's the kind of thing where, if you're setting your New Year's resolution, you want to set something that could potentially be attainable. And I just don't think he can reconcile with sand. It's not just the men, but the women and children too would disagree with his ability to reconcile with sand. So I chose become a real Jedi Master because I felt like that one was potentially attainable. It's like, yeah, he's an adult, but he could go back to college and finish his degree, that sort of thing.
I also went with become a real Jedi Master because I think that, to me, upgrading C-3PO is like, what are you going to do? Like, change his programming? Like, to me, if you're going to upgrade him, you're turning him into a war machine or something like that. You're putting some like shoulder-mounted turrets on him and stuff. But I don't think that's in the spirit of what, Anakin, Darth Vader would.
He's always getting into trouble, though. So maybe instead you just give him those like droideka shields. So he's still C-3PO. He's just got a protective bubble. He's like the boy in a bubble.
The card says moops. So yeah, I said Jedi Master. I think, like you said, in terms of attainability, I mean, just read more Darth Plagueis. Like, it's there. It's a It's a story that they might not tell you otherwise. But there you have it. Here are the results, friend, for the poll, the cave poll of the week. The winner was Reconcile with Sand. I mean, it's just go make peace. I think that that's a very good outlook for anyone who's wanting to start 2024 off on the right foot. Go ahead, reconcile with one of your most hated endeavors or entities or whatever it is. Second place, Become a Real Jedi Master at 25.5%. At 23.6%, Read More Darth Plagueis. And way behind is Upgrade C-3PO at 14.5%. So the winner with 36.4%, Reconcile with Sand. Fair. Deal.
Fair.
Deal. All right. You said there's a lot of stuff that we got to get to.
There's a lot. So.
Yeah. So let's roll through it. Charmer, hit us with the headlines.
All right. So the headlines are pretty straightforward. Obviously, the big one is the live stream that occurred today. So we are filming this on January 3rd. It is roughly 5:42 p.m. Eastern time as we record this. So it's fresh. In fact, it's so fresh that as we talk about some of the cards that were revealed during the stream, they're not even up on SWU yet.
What are you doing?
First time we've ever beat them in terms of coverage. And it was a stream that focused on draft, and so we're going to talk about the draft experience and the format as our main topic, but also things that were covered during the live stream. They mentioned that there is an article that's now live on the website. The article talks about the kind of 10,000-foot view of draft rules as well as sealed rules. So sealed is you open 6 packs, you build your deck. It's got to be at least 30 cards. You have to use leaders from the packs that you open, but common bases are treated like tokens, and that's the same as draft. Again, we'll cover that later. And then the one caveat with sealed is that they said for official pre-release events, there are sometimes these like promo kits, promo boxes that are given out, and if they include leaders, then you will be allowed to use those at the pre-release. That will be part of your pool. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Not bad. I dig it for sure. Again, you and I are very much limited players. I want to just, I kind of want to light speed through this because I really want to talk about draft. So,
other just quick things. We got to see foils on the stream, including hyperspace foils. They're pretty. Common hyperspace bases also have a hyperspace version of the token on the back. So all common bases also have a token, whether that's experience token, shield token, etc. Also, other related headlines, Asmodee has sent out emails and marketing now you can pre-order Star Wars Unlimited through them. And I won't go through all of the costs or anything, but they do have pretty much everything that's been revealed so far up there. So that's like booster boxes, the 2-player starter deck. There are some play mats, including the really cool 2-player play mat that was at Gen Con and all of those things. But other play mats with all of those deck boxes from Game Genic, et cetera, are there. So marketing is ramping up. That's the main reason I was including it. And the big thing, I'm sorry, my brain is going faster than my mouth because I also want to get to the meat of this. The other big thing is it's the new year. So we can finally all say Star Wars Unlimited comes out this year.
That is a very cool thing to say, given the fact that we spent so much time talking about next year. It is this year. We can say that. 2024. Welcome aboard. I do want to say this is that the pre-orders, actually, I was approached by some friends of mine who own LCGs offering me to do some pre-orders quite a while ago, actually, probably about over a month and a half ago. They're like, hey, we have the option. And that said, I don't know the legalities of it, but I declined at the time. And not because I'm not going to play the game, obviously. I'm just waiting. But we're going to get there.
I had some LGSs that opened their pre-orders earlier than this like marketing push as well. And I also declined, but I only did it because it was like the height of Christmas season and I have 2 kids to buy presents for and a wife to buy presents for. And so like, I just didn't have discretionary income.
That'll do it.
So now that that's passed, I will be looking to place my pre-orders, but that was a big part of my decision-making process.
How many you buying? That's the question here. And I will be completely transparent here. I have not purchased sealed product of Flesh and Blood since Outsiders, which is we're approaching a year ago. And that isn't to say that I'm off the game or I'm not interested in it. I still adore and love that game inside out. It's just a matter of what I do and how I play the game is different. And like my relationship with it is such that I don't get the same thrill of ripping packs as I once did, mainly because I am just surrounded all around me with cards everywhere. And it's just a matter of having to sort of tone it down. But this might be one where I might go ham. This might be like a right out of the gate. It's like, I'm just going to get 10 boxes. I'm going to open 4 or 5 of them, see where we're at, and then store some away for draft nights and things like that.
See, yeah, I haven't made my decision yet. So traditionally, if it's stuff that I'm opening, usually my go-to in Fab, a case is 4 boxes, so that makes it easy. I usually get a case, and then I just get singles to fill out the rest. But like a case is usually enough bulk where I get pretty much all the commons and, for Flesh and Blood, the commons and rares that you need, and then you fill out Majestics and Legendaries. So if I was just buying what I was going to open and then fill in my singles, I would say somewhere like 3 to 4 boxes of this. But this set looks so fun to draft, and knowing exactly what you said, that I might want a box here or there for draft nights because it's just so easy to do. I don't know. I might order more. I want to order more. It's going to be dependent upon my budget. That's the problem.
Want and need and etc. are all different flavors of the same desire, but still, I get you, man. Hey, if there's an LGS out there that wants to sponsor the podcast, let's talk. Let us talk. All right.
Oh, yeah. I got to have at least 1 box for emergency packs, too.
Well, we'll have to have an emergency pack box as well. Like, that's all factored in for sure. We'll see. I mean, it'd be nice. Like, if FFG just is like, FFG, if you're listening and you're like, dude, you guys need to stay on track, damn it. You could help us easily. Just send us a box and we'll have it ready to go. We'll have the emergency pack button. We rip it open. We say, I got this. And we could have like a winning, like we could have a running tally of who wins the emergency pack game every. All right. Let's get to the card reveals because we want to talk about draft. I'm just going to go through this pretty fast and furious here. Card reveals again. We want to give love to SWU, who does a fantastic job of putting this stuff up. Except this time, slacker. I would just like to apologize. This is my first apology of this show. When we recorded this yesterday, SWU was not updated. When I woke up this morning to edit, it was. So SWU, keep doing what you're doing. Love you. Mean it. Let's go with Force Throw. It's a 1-cost aggression aspect event. It is a force style event. It says, choose a player. That player discards a card from their hand. Then, if you control a force unit, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the cost of the discarded card. Okay, so this card, by the way, revealed by TCG Cast, so thank you so much. I have very strong feelings about this card one way or another because for 1-cost single aspect, what this does is immense. However, the trade-off here is that you're giving your opponent agency into how they do this. But you can put them into a very difficult scenario because, to me, it's fun to play this on like an early turn, but they'll have a lot of cards, they'll have a lot of options of what they want to discard and whatnot. But late game, if you're just drawing this and you just discard the 1 card that they have in hand that they've been holding on to, and it's like a 7 or 8 cost card, and you're just burning down the house with it, I am so on the fence with this. I think that this card's floor is pretty basic, but its ceiling is immense. And as an uncommon, I think that's what you're getting. I think that's what you want.
I really like this card because it's one of the few. There are a couple others, but it's one of the few. When I looked at it, I said I would absolutely throw this in because it's a single aspect. I would absolutely throw this into a deck where I'm paying the tax for this. So what I was thinking about immediately was if I'm playing a heroism force control deck, right? So you're running your Yodas, your Lukes, your Obi-Wans, your Kanans. You're not typically pairing that with aggression, but I would pay 3 if I know I can always get the force trigger, even if it's the absolute like bare minimum, right? Like I would pay 3 to make my opponent discard a card and still deal 1 damage to a unit. That that's still pretty good trade-off. So I think that the upside is definitely worth it if you can pair it with the Force unit. This just feels really cost-effective and really powerful.
I agree. I think it's a great card, and this definitely has a lot of potential for, like you said, this is a splash around card, if I've ever seen one, because single aspect, one cost, I'd pay 3 for this. I would.
Yeah.
Next card.
Yeah, next card is Pirated Starfighter. So this is a 2-cost cunning space unit. The stats are a 2/4, has underworld, vehicle, and fighter tags. Keyword of raid 1. But when played, return a friendly non-leader unit to its owner's hand. There are a couple of things I like about this one. I like that it's a pirated starfighter, and the flavor is you have to bounce something. So it's like the benefit is this got pirated, so it had to make something go away to get the pirated version. Obviously, the stat line is way over the cost because of the bounce portion, right? 2 for a 2/4 with a keyword is very, very strong. Even more so in space. The 4 health is important because it doesn't die to things like Interceptor necessarily. But you have to have the offset. I think this card is going to be really strong in the future if you've got a bunch of 1-drops with like good comes into play effects, so that you can play a 1-drop and then play the pirated starfighter and bounce it, things like that.
So what I really love about this card is that if you can just open the game by playing this, and I don't think the when played effect will target itself, right? Am I wrong here?
It doesn't say return another friendly unit. It says return a, and so I do think it would bounce itself. Obviously, we'll have to wait for some sort of rules clarification, but I would have expected another.
Yeah, no, and again, like you're right, because that type of terminology and the way that the card text is structured, that is indicative of what it's meant to do. I've seen this in other card games for sure. When it says another or anything, it changes things drastically. If that was the fact, if like that there was that nuance to the rules where it cannot, like the when played effect resolves before the card resolves on the board, so technically there's nothing on the board for it to happen. If you could just play this to a naked board, it is an incredible card. This is a 3 of, in my opinion, if you're playing a cunning deck, because having a 2/4 2-drop that can swing for 3 is massive. That trades with anything on the board at that in space on that turn cycle, or sorry, on that at that cost. That said, though, there's going to be a lot of cards whose only utility, frankly, is the on deploy effect, like the when played effect. In which case, you play this, you bounce those cheap cards that have strong when played effects, and you just keep cycling those. I think that's incredible. I really, really love this card.
I also really like it for limited. It is an uncommon, and one of the places where it stands out to me is that if you get a unit that's got a big back end and you use it to soak up some damage or make some value trades, then you could bounce it and then redeploy it. So you're kind of extending your resources in that regard. There's a few different ways I think that this could be good, but this is, one of those cards I think that definitely shines in a couple of sets where the number of potential return targets like really ramps up.
Yep, I agree. But you're right. Just rescuing a unit that's going to bite it. Like if you got a fat ass and you've been taking it, baby, if it's like if you've been receiving on the spanking end for a while, bringing it back and dropping it again makes your opponent feel really annoyed for sure.
So shout out real quick to TCG Cast. They are the ones who revealed Force Throw and Pirated Starfighter, and now we're going to move on to 2 other cards that were revealed this time from Tabletop Misfits.
This card for me, man, I think that this is the next card. It's a 1-drop command. It is a ground unit called Vanguard Infantry. It is a trooper with a 1/2 stat line. When defeated, you may give an experience token to a unit. Dude, this is what I was waiting to see in a trooper deck. All the troopers have when attack, or when it attacks, or when it attacks with something else or whatever. Nothing was really giving me they're so easy to defeat that they're just going to get chewed up. I was waiting to see the Bobo weenie unit that made everything else stronger when it dies, and this is it. Because there's a lot of these that exist in other card games, weak units that just improve, that have like death rattle effects or death wish effects or whatever that you want to call them, demise effects. In this case, this is exactly what it is. It's a 1-cost 1/2 that will, when it dies, will improve the other units on your board, which is, it's difficult. This also gives your opponent some math to do. It's like, well, if I just kill this, it'll make that bigger, and I don't have a response for that. So do I kill the other thing, or do I put, like, I love this kind of stuff. Anything that leaves loot bags when it dies is the best.
Yeah, this is also, in my mind, it's really important because it's just a single command. So it's very splashable. And if you're playing like a ramp deck where you are already running DJ Death Star and other units that you're looking to kind of sacrifice early, this is an early threat that you can deploy. And then if you pair it with something that's like a big Sentinel, then this can trade with some of the smaller units while buffing up the big Sentinel that's kind of holding down your front line while you ramp to your late game threats. There's just a lot of versatility here. It's great with the Trooper tag, as you said, helps you with your swarm strategies. The Leia deck, for example, or like a Tarkin deck, I think are going to want to run this. But I do think that this has a lot of value in a lot of different ways.
Next up, my friend.
Next up, Heroic Sacrifice. This is a 1-cost event, has the tactic keyword. It is heroism and aggression. It also has great art. Just sidetracking real quick, the K2SO is fantastic. But the text, draw a card, then attack with a unit. For this attack, it gets +2/+0 and gains when this unit deals combat damage, defeat it. So you get a lot of value for this 1 cost. And if you're already playing heroism aggression, then you're probably playing Sabine, and this gets you a ton of value there because you are likely just trying to race anyway. So you pay 1, you get to replace this card because you draw a card, so it cycles itself. You get 2 extra damage. The unit that you attack with dies, but who cares? You might have got the big trade up you needed. You might have got that damage on the base you needed. And then, as we were just talking about with the previous card, if you've got any good when defeated triggers, you get that too. Like, this does a lot.
It does a lot, but to me, I think that this is merely, it's like, first of all, any card that replaces itself, already amazing. That's what you want for aggro. You want to punch above your weight, but also replenish the hand. This does everything you want it to do. It's a punch-up card that your 1 or 2 drop is going to probably trade with a 4 or 5 drop because of the +1. The defeat it part, you're probably sacking that card into the thing anyways. So that part to me doesn't matter. But at the same time, if you're just killing the base, who cares? Like if this is the extra 2 damage to you means winning or losing the game, then your units are all expendable. That's something that I really had to. What turned me from a bad card player to a average card player was not coveting cards and not caring that if they lived or died. Card gaming is very much a means to an ends type of thing. So your poor K2SO, if he has to bite it so that you can get that much closer to winning, you have to do it. I think that this card is good. I think this card has a lot more utilization than people might think it does. The defeat it part is just kind of like, all right, it was going to, like, to me, it was going to die anyways. Like, if I'm playing this card, that card was meant to die anyways.
You know, talking about a means to an end means you're not very loyal to your cards. Some might even say you are traitorous. So I think that this is a great way to segue to a bunch of cards that were revealed during the stream today, Fantasy Flight Game stream. Do you want to kick us off with the first one, Flake?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I now remember what I missed. For the record, though, like in my little retreat away from this stuff, which was very well needed, and I do want to tell people that if you Charmer and I both have issues with depression and things like that. I stepped away when needed. My friends, stepped up for me and did the show without me, which was great, and I appreciate it. But I watched a lot of movies. I watched Rogue One another time. That movie's so good. And seeing K2SO in that card, man. But yeah, Traitorous is the next one. It's a 5-cost command upgrade. It says, when this upgrade becomes attached to a non-leader unit that costs 3 or less, take control of it. When it becomes unattached, the owner of the card regains control of it. This is essentially, these cards exist in a lot of different card games. Typically the I'm trying to think of like the mana or the cost translation is for 3, you get it for a turn and it has haste. For 5, typically you're like keeping it unless some bogus stuff happens. I like that they've capped this at 3 or less cost. It's a 2-for-1 is what it is. And I think a lot of people need to understand that if you're getting 2 cards worth of value for your 1 card, that is the macroscopic kind of card game economy that you want to be working towards from a value perspective. You're playing traders for 5. You're taking a 3-cost unit from them, and you're gaining a 3-cost unit. If that unit is upgraded with shields and experience tokens and other stuff, awesome. But they can't do anything until they get rid of this upgrade. And there aren't many cards we've seen that deal with upgrades yet, if I'm not mistaken. But I really like this card. I think that this card is a sideboard card, and I think that at the same time, it's a very powerful tool for your sideboard. To me, I would never put this in a main board because you don't know what 3 or less cost garbage that they're going to be spewing on the board, and you don't want to play 5 to get a 2-drop 1/1 that does nothing. Unless there are... DJ Death Star has the when defeated, it becomes a resource, right?
Yeah.
So you could like steal a DJ Death Star, crash it into something, and then get it as a resource, which is cool. But I feel like that's just not an efficient means of 5 resources in a game. But that's just me.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on with this card. One, just real quick, the art is another kind of callback to more Clone Wars-ish era stuff. It's Barasafi. So if you're not familiar with that storyline, I won't spoil it for you, but it is, I think, pretty solid. The big thing that I want to mention with this is that when you take control of a unit, this is an upgrade. As you said, not a ton of ways to deal with upgrades. Most of them reside in red right now. Red has quite a few cards that deal with it, but that's color specific. That leans into what you were saying, where if this is a sideboard card, you could bring this in against non-red decks because you also are pretty confident at that point your card's going to stick. But also, when I look at the kinds of cards you want to take with this, there are some pretty standout 3-cost, specifically 3-cost cards that are, I think, going to be linchpins to certain decks. So you've got things like General Veers. So if you're on like some sort of Stormtrooper deck, that's one way. Boba Fett, so the non-leader Boba Fett, just the 3-drop one, who is a house of stats. Like that's a ideal pickup in my mind. If you can steal something like Boba Fett, you're in pretty good shape. So I do think that there are going to be some good targets for this, and because this is single aspect, because it's just command, it's very splashable, and I do think that this will be a very popular sideboard card.
All right, what's up next?
What's up next is part of a cycle that they were talking about on the live stream. So this is Jedha Agitator. This is a 2-cost ground unit. It's just aggression, but it's part of a cycle, so there's one for each of the 4 aspects. This is a 2/1 rebel, has the saboteur keyword, and then it says on attack, if you control a leader unit, deal 2 damage to a ground unit or base. And that's the cycle they were talking about. There's a series of units that basically say on attack, if you control a leader, do the thing. And that is the aggression one. I think this card is solid. In limited, it feels very strong at the common slot. The 2/1 stats aren't great, but it's 2 for a single aspect 2/1 that has Saboteur, which is pretty relevant. And then if you can even get the on attack to trigger once, you're probably getting your value out of it. So in limited, I think it's pretty strong.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool card to have. I'm not like blown away by it, but this does incentivize you to have a cheaper leader to a degree. So if you're playing aggression, and I mean it from the standpoint of you're being an aggressive player, this is a great card to play with like one of those 3 or 4 cost leaders that you can just kind of flip, send your Jedha Agitator as a 2 attack, and then the 2 damage can either snipe something small or go straight to face deal more damage, and then you're just whittling your opponent down. It is meant to be expendable. The Saboteur part is, I want you to clean the board on your turn. I'm not interested in trading. The trading is on you. So that's what the Saboteur part is also, is like, I'm just going to get right past your Sentinels, go to face, deal 2 damage, and if I get 4 out of this and waste one of your actions on killing this, I'm way ahead. And I think that that's kind of where it is. In the common slot, I think it's a very strategy-oriented card for a hyper-aggression build.
You want to hit the next one? It's part of the cycle.
All right, cycle time. 5-cost unit on the ground. It is a command card. It is the Steadfast Battalion, a 5/5 stat line trooper. It has Overwhelm built in, comes stock in 2024. On attack, if you control a leader, give a friendly unit +2/+2 for this phase. Pretty good. And when you said cycle, I was kind of thinking that they would all be like 1 or 2 drops, like they'd all have the same stat line with different kind of things. But I think that a 5/5, like for a trooper deck, this might be the top end that you're looking for. I don't think you're going much above this. If you're going to play a 3 of a particular card, trooper decks typically want the swarm element, so you want a lot of small, cheaper stuff. But this might be the top end. I think that the overwhelm part is pretty important, but at the same time, giving something +2/+2. It says a friendly unit. Does that mean this?
I don't. It doesn't say another friendly unit, so I think that actually might still be the case.
All right then, a 7/7 overwhelm for 5 single aspect. Rewind, massive. If that's the case, if you've got your trooper hero on and you can just swing for 7, like trooper aggro can be pretty nasty if this thing can do the dirty on itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The other reason I really like this one is because it's plus stats, and that includes like the health and whatever. This could help keep your leader alive, because obviously you're only getting the trigger if you have your leader on the field anyway.
That's a good point.
And so you could attack with this and then buff up your leader and then protect it for at least a turn and get some more value. So when I'm looking at this, I was thinking like, okay, a swarm like Leia trooper deck, something like that makes an awful lot of sense here.
Go for the next one, friend.
Yeah, I suppose now is a good time. I guess I can make an opening for this reveal. The card is titled Make an Opening. It is an event with the tactic tag. Part of the text should say Make Flake slap his forehead with my bad puns, but instead it says it's a 3-cost vigilance tactic, make an opening, give a unit -2/-2 for this phase, heal 2 damage from your base. This is a common. I think this card is crazy good. Like, when I saw this, my eyes widened. I was like, okay, wait a minute. At a common slot, like, yes, it's 3, but you're telling me I can essentially give something -2/-2, potentially kill off a unit and heal 2 from my base? What? Hello? Like, I want to play this in every vigilance deck I have. This card seems really strong.
I believe it is a strong card. I think that this is going to sound weird, but like if this could cost 2.5, I think that it'd be spot on. I feel like at 2 cost, this card is too strong, and at 3 cost, it's good. 3 cost is tough, but I like the way that you can, like the way that this game is structured, where you're drawing a lot of cards, you're ramping up pretty quickly. It's not going to hurt you. It just might limit what you can potentially do early in a game. But still, -2/-2, you're either clearing out some garbage on the base. Like, to me, this is a great card to deal with aggro. You know, like small card on the board, get rid of it. It'll die. Or if there's a somewhat heftier thing that you just want to deal with, give it -2/-2, heal 2 damage, and then kill the thing because it got nerfed a little bit. I think it's a strong card. But like I said, if this could cost 2.8. That's where I want it to be, not 3. But I don't live in that.
I think the other thing really going for it is much like the other cards we've recently revealed here. Single aspect. So very splashable, whether you're playing light side vigilance, dark side vigilance, whatever. This card just feels really good in the common slot to me.
Hit us up with the next one. I'll give you 2 in a row here.
All right, so we are moving on to Bounty Hunter Crew. This is a 6-cost ground unit. It is villainy and cunning. The stats are, I say, only a 4/4 because that is pretty low for a 6-drop, but it does have Underworld and Bounty Hunter tags. Has the ambush keyword, but also when played, you may return an event from a discard pile to its owner's hand. Now, this is very, very interesting to me. I can't think of a reason, at least right now, that I would want to bounce my enemy's event back to their hand. You could theoretically do it, but the reason that I was like, oh, wait a minute here, team events, I don't know what the rulings are going to be. Can I target my teammate if we ever have a 2-headed giant format, whatever? The return an event from a discard pile to its owner's hand has a lot of multiplayer possibilities. And so I dig it for that reason alone. Even if the stats are very low for what it does, that part made me go, okay, wait a minute. There's more to this game than I originally thought.
You know who would get extra horny for a card like this? Our good friend No Control, a.k.a. Nick Bolas, a.k.a. Mike Torek. This is a piece of a combo. This is a piece of a degenerate kind of recursive thing where you're going to find an event that is going to do some sort of weird circular, jerkular type of behavior where you're going to get a card back that's going to do a thing that's going to get this card back, that's going to get that card back. It's going to create some sort of time loop that is going to drive people bananas. When I see any card that is a body that returns a quote-unquote spell, an event to your hand, that is dangerous. Now, I think that the caveat to that warning is that there are no instant speed effects, as we've discussed in previous episodes. So you can't do naughty stuff all in a row. You're giving your opponent an opportunity to respond. However, Charmer, you got to feel the same kind of thing. Like our Magic friends, people like Tannen, people like Brian Basoko, people, they're going to, if they get into this game, the first thing they're going to look at is how can I break this card?
Yeah, it is. It does feel like a piece. This just feels like a cog, because if it doesn't have that last line of text, this card is very lackluster. But everything that is interesting is in that when played. And like I said, for me, I was like, okay, because it's just an event in a discard to its owner's hand. What are the ways I can abuse this? Is it multiplayer because I could maybe have my teammate return something? Are there going to be future cards or future sets where having events in my opponent's hand matters, and this is a way that I force them into a situation they don't want to be in? I mean, even just thinking about what was it, Force Throw that we've already talked about earlier, where if they have no cards in their hand, but you play this and they have to return something, now they either have to play it or now I'm going to make them re-discard it but nuke something, right? So there's got to be more to this, and I'm dying to see what it is.
Next up, we're going to go... Oh, first of all, I just want to rewind real quick. Does this Bounty Hunter Crew to you look like they're pulled from an episode of the Bizarro Jerry episode of Seinfeld? It's like the crew, but not the crew.
Yeah, kind of.
You got a fake Bosk, a fake Dengar, you got a fake Zuckus, a fake Forlom,
Yeah. I mean, now that you've mentioned it, I definitely see the fake Bosk, fake Dengar.
It's like Bizarro Jerry world in there for sure.
It's we've got the bounty hunters at home.
Yeah, this is like your Kirkland brand bounty hunter crew. You can't afford the real deal, so you're getting these clowns. But anyway, all right. Next up is the Mercenary Company, a 6-drop command, a single aspect. It's a ground unit. The stat line is 5/5. It's a Underworld and Trooper tag, so you got both. And it just comes in with, it's a 5/5 for 6 that has Ambush and Overwhelm. So again, back to, hey, drop it, send it, push through, get damage. I'm beginning to believe, well, not beginning, I'm further believing that these trooper decks are going to be command, they're going to be potentially aggression, and the top end, like these cards might not even make it to those particular decks. I think that if you're paying 6, the only redeeming factor for this is that it has ambush. If I'm not paying 6 for a 5/5 overwhelm trooper, I'm paying 6 for a 5/5 overwhelm that I can send when I deploy it. Like,
Right.
do you remember that scene from Futurama when they're going to the ball planet and they all get drafted, and Zap Brannigan says, some of you will kill for your people, some of you will die for your people, some of you will be pushed through a fine mesh for your people, you will be luckiest of all. And then he says, then he talks about how that they're outgunned and everything, but they have the element of surprise, so surprise. And then he just drops everybody out of the mess hall into the battlefield. That's how I feel like this is. This is those doofuses from that episode of Futurama.
This is definitely, all the value is in the element of surprise. And I don't think that'll be really a surprise. People will very quickly learn to play around this. When I looked at this, 5/5 for 6, as you said, not great, but it's 2 keywords. They both combine very, very well. And the fact that this is a common means I expect this to be the top end of a lot of the limited command decks, or close to the top end. You know, you might have some 7s or 8s or whatever, but this is going to be one of your kind of power plays. And you can just use it as removal, right? It's just, hey, I'm going to swing into something that I need to get rid of. Or if you've got a desire to push damage, and you've got another unit on the board that has 1 health, well, then suddenly this becomes 4 direct damage, and that's also pretty relevant. So I like the card. I think that the real strength will be in limited. If it does see any constructed play, I feel like this is one of those ones that will get power crept out after a couple of sets.
Agreed. Again, like it might just round out like 1 or 2 copies in a trooper deck early on, but yeah, set 2, 3 is probably going to wheel that out.
All right. I'll do the next one. So we were talking about Traitorous earlier and upgrades. Well, now we have Power Failure. This is a 2-cost aggression event, has the tactic keyword, and it simply says defeat any number of upgrades on a unit. And this is in the uncommon slot. This, much like Traitorous, is a card I expect to see in a lot of sideboards.
Yep, sideboard card for sure. Up to, I would even, depends on what the meta shakes out to be, but if there's a deck out there that likes to beef up their dudes, you'll have a 3 of them there. And especially if Traitorous becomes a problem. If Traitorous is actually a problem and you want to protect your stuff, Power Failure is the way to go. Not much else to say, really. Defeat an upgrade. Sounds good. It's like Disenchant from...
It's kind of, but it's almost kind of like... a bit more, because it's not just 1, it's all of them, right? It's defeat any number.
Yeah.
So if they load up, if they've got like 3 experience and a shield token on 1 unit, those are all upgrades, right? So you're just like, oh, I pay 2 and nuke it. So it's, I mean, you're right. It's like a Disenchant, but it's significantly stronger in this regard.
Yeah, like I say Disenchant because Disenchant was from the original set. It's from Alpha, right?
Yeah.
And this is the Alpha, quote unquote, set of Star Wars U. So in my mind, I'm like, this might just be what that is. Like they both cost 2, I think.
Yep.
So next up, we got a main character. It is a 2-drop. It's command. It's heroism. Ground unit. It is Mon Mothma, Voice of the Rebellion. I like that they're using the Mon Mothma that looks a little bit more like the Return of the Jedi Mon Mothma. Though the casting for Mon Mothma, young Mon Mothma in like Andor and all this stuff, exquisite. I think that the actor that plays Mon Mothma is unreal. It's a Rebel official, a 1/3 stat line. When played, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a Rebel, reveal it, draw it. So when you're hunting for big Rebels, that's what you want. Remember, we're talking about the pirated Starfighter? That's kind of a target for the pirated Starfighter. You might want to bounce this, bring this back to hand, play it again, go look for another fat Rebel. It's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm talking about those weaker cards or weaker statted cards that all of their relevance comes into the when played effect. It's an uncommon Mon Mothma, I mean, we've seen these before. This is like Tarkin, right? To a degree, kind of.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, right? It is the heroism version of Tarkin. And I like that for heroism and villainy, we have a lot of cards that I think have similarities, but they're not direct copy and pastes. Even when we look at like General Veers, for example, the cost and the stats are different compared to the heroism variant. And so this is, in my mind, kind of like your Tarkin, but not quite the same, right? Lower stats, you just get to do the reveal, find something on play. But I dig it. You know who does not have small stats, though?
Tell me.
Our next card, which is AT-AT Suppressor. This is an 8-cost ground unit in Villainy and Vigilance. It has an 8/8 stat line. It's an Imperial Vehicle Walker. And when played, exhaust all ground units. So at uncommon, I think that what you want is this is your like late game finisher or a control tool, because if you lead your turn off, you could, if you have a wide opposing board, for example, but you lead your turn off with this, then you have just shut down the vast majority of what was going to happen. Like, this is pretty impactful at the uncommon slot.
So when you say AT-AT Suppressor, the first thing I thought of was like a silencer for its guns. And I thought it would be an upgrade, which I thought was kind of good. But you're right. I surprise, like, as somebody who has been a fan of every single Fat Boy that they've printed, I'm not a fan of this one. I don't like this card. 8/8 for 8. Great. Sounds good. Though, exhaust all ground units. That includes your own, by the way. That does include your own. To me, without overwhelm, I think that it's so-so. And the reason why is because you'll play it. You'll exhaust everything. Your opponent doesn't have an opportunity to really do much. To me, I think that this is a card that is basically daring your opponent to take the initiative. Because if you're dropping it on an 8, there's a good chance you don't have a strong follow-up because you've already exhausted all your ground units. So unless there's space stuff to take care of, like if you're dropping this and exhausting everything, your opponent will be like, well, I can't attack. I could play something, and then you'll get all the initiative. So do I just take the initiative right now? Like, you need initiative with this, and I don't know. It's like I'm still sort of kind of thinking of it. I could be completely wrong.
You've kind of danced around what I was thinking when I saw this. Space is the real highlight for this. I think we've seen so far a lot of emphasis on ground units, and it makes sense because characters are traditionally ground units, at least so far in the game. And while we've got some iconic ships and things like that, there's just not the breadth of variance that there is on the ground. But if you are ever going to build some sort of space-oriented deck, right, where you're saying, all right, I want to win the space lane, this is a great top end for, like, if I have control of the space lane, I got, 3 or 4 units, and then I'm running this as my top end where all I'm doing is I just want to stall the ground out over and over again, then that's fantastic, right? Like, I will give you, even if I don't have initiative, I'll give you 1 action on the ground, and then I will shut down all of the rest of the stuff you wanted to do on the ground, develop an 8/8 doing so, but also take all my actions in space. And then if you do that like back-to-back turns as a top end, that feels really powerful. So I don't think this will be like a set 1 all-star because we don't have enough space support, I think, quite yet. But long-term, this feels pretty scary if that's your goal.
Dude, play this, Pirated Starfighter, bring it back to hand, and then you're still developing space. And then once again, you drop this down. Free, like you're right, and I think that's where I was trying to get at in my head as I was sort of parsing it out. This is the first time I've seen these cards. I didn't watch the stream beyond their explanation of how draft works, so I didn't see a lot of the reveals. This card for me, though, you're building a space oriented deck. The problem is, I feel like with you're running a space oriented deck, it's command, it's villainy, and it's not necessarily vigilance. I could be wrong about that. I want to sit down and really theory craft and build some stuff. But AT-AT Suppressor, to me, is like, all right, if my deck is going to have like 6 to 6 to 8 ground units, it's probably going to be 3 of these, like 2 or 3 of these, because I'm going to be establishing a space game, and anything you put on the ground is going to get bounced with cunning effects, bounced, frozen, bounced, and then boom. As we ramped up, I'm going to drop the AT-AT suppressor. But now we're talking about command, villainy, vigilance, and cunning. And that means that something is going to have to pay the tax. And that's dangerous. All right. Next up, when I don't know how to even open this up. I'll just call it what it is. It's the Cargo Juggernaut. It's a 6-drop vigilance unit, ground unit, a vehicle, a tank. I don't think we've ever seen a tank yet. So that's a tribal that for you Trade Federation wieners out there. A 4/6 comes built in with a shield. When played, if you control another vigilance unit, heal 4 damage from your base. You'll probably always have another vigilance unit ready to go. Heal 4 from your base. This is a very good card, if I'm being real, for what you want to do, which is, to me, vigilance is all about stalling the game, controlling it, going the distance, grinding your opponent out. That's what Cargo Juggernaut does.
Yeah, I will say, I think that the stats and the keyword are not great for the cost, but the when played is very, very strong. And because this is in the common slot, this is like your stabilizer in limited. Because by the time you get to 6, if you're on vigilance and your opponent's got out in front of you, what this does, as long as you've got that other vigilance unit to get the when played, you get some damage off your base, and then you get this 4/6 shielded. So what this unit is then likely going to be used for, if you're playing this kind of slow, grindy game plan with vigilance, is this is going to start trading into opponents' units probably for the next 3 turns, because you're going to get the shielded trade, you're going to get another trade with that 6 health, and then you're probably going to get one last one, right? So this is meant to be your common slot stabilizer for limited, in my opinion.
Yep. When this hits the board, as if you're within vigilance in limited, this card is going to be backbreaking to your opponent, because like you said, it's going to take work to deal with. The next card might be one of my favorite in the common slots so far, but I'll let you do it.
Oh, no, you can do it, because I like the last one.
Okay, cool.
So I'll let you do this one.
3-cost event. Command, Strike True, a tactic. It says a friendly unit deals damage equal to its power to an enemy unit. If you're a green player in Magic, you have seen a lot of these. A lot of those, your target your creature, it gets +1/+1, and it fights your opponent's creature, or your creature deals damage equal to its power to your opponent's creature. There's a lot of these cards within Magic. They're all green based, and ironically, here's another green card. Green is ramp in here. Green is also ramp in Magic as well. So we're seeing a little bit of the color ideology matching what the actual, the strategic ideology is as well. But still, this card is basically, if you're playing Command, you're probably going to have big boys on the board anyways. This is just a 3-cost go boom onto your opponent. And I'm also wondering if this factors in trample, like overwhelm effects. I don't think it does, but...
Yeah, I don't think it does, because overwhelm says when attacking an enemy unit, and this says it deals damage equal to its power. It doesn't say, you attack.
Okay. All right, no, that makes sense. So, yeah, but still, for 3 cost, if you're playing this within Command, Villainy, Mystery Meat as a ramp to your big boys, your big Star Destroyers, your AT-ATs, your stuff like that. I mean, for 3 costs, you're pretty much killing almost everything on the board. There's very few things that can withstand the 7 to 8 damage that you're going to be outputting based on your Star Destroyers or AT-ATs that are just going to be holding court in either lane.
One of the things that I would say, you earmark and you kind of pay attention to for the future is there's a lot of stuff that is on attack. So even when you're talking about if a unit needs to defeat something, right, they still are on attack. Boba Fett again kind of comes to mind for me, where it's it's got a thing where if Boba Fett defeats a unit or whatever, but it's still the on attack. If we ever have things where instead the unit is worded as if this defeats an enemy, then this would work. Because again, it's not the attack part, but your unit is still the thing dealing the damage, and that is potentially relevant at some point.
The next one, Charmer, is one of the best artworks in the entire
Yeah, that's
set.
one of the reasons I love it.
Okay.
So I just love this card in general, and I'm normally an aggro guy, and I'm definitely going to play a lot of Sabine, but the more I see out of Vigilance, the more I think I'm going to end up being like a late game control player for this game. The final card that was revealed on the stream today, the draft stream, was Devotion. This is a 2-cost upgrade. It is just in Vigilance, so very splashable. It says attached unit gains Restore 2. It also provides a +1/+1 in stats, and it has the like Devotion and Devotion is the name, but has the innate tag as well for the upgrade. Now, the art is Yoda on Luke's back, and with they're swinging on a vine, right? Like the Dagobah forest in the back. It's just fun, cheeky art. I really like this because, again, if you're playing Vigilance, you're going to need ways to stay alive long enough to stabilize the board. And this being on an upgrade means that with the back and forth actions, you can either punish an opponent for taking the initiative too early. You can play this on a readied unit and get that free attack. I also really, really like that this is just attached unit, not ground unit. So if you have control of the space, but you're losing control of the ground, you can use this to buy yourself some time to reestablish control of the ground. There's just a lot of flexibility in this for just an uncommon. I think it's very strong and limited. I think it's, again, likely going to be included in some constructed decks. It's good. I really dig it for Vigilance.
It's excellent. I really like this card as well. 2-drop, single aspect. +1/+1 plus the, like, again, extending the game longevity. It's great. I was playing some Magic Limited today, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and there is a card called Tithing Blade or something. It's a 2-cost, and it transforms into an enchantment that says at the beginning of your turn, you gain a life, your opponent loses a life. So it that card created inevitability, and at one point I had like 3 or 4 of them going, so it's like all you have to do is just survive. Not that that's what this card does. It doesn't have inevitability to it. It has survivability for your base. You could put this on something that is just like your big behemoth, and they might not want to mess with it, but every time it attacks, it restores 2 to your base. So you're extending the game. But we've seen that with so many different cards like that within Vigilance. So we've said this, we've teased it forever. We're going to do an ideology related breakdown. It's just hard to get us all in the same room at the same time, but we're working on it. Still, this card to me is a hallmark of what Vigilance wants to do. It's a pretty good card.
So the last thing that was kind of revealed, I guess it counts as a card reveal, so I put it in this section of the show notes. There were some additional common bases that were shown off during the draft stream, and it was mentioned specifically that there are 8. So there are 2 common bases per aspect. And what that says to me is at some point, the planet tags have to matter, right? Because otherwise, why would you have multiple common bases unless there's going to be a difference between, whether your base is on Lothal or Jeddah or whatever. So yeah, it's just worth noting. They were still the standard 30 health, nothing flashy there, but we do have 2 common bases per aspect.
All right, so there you have it. That is all that we learned in this past stream and the releases and the reveals. So anything after today and right now being January 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are not responsible for. Let's get to the main topic here, Charmer, which is the fact that they've basically told us how to draft. For those who are new to card games in general, Limited itself is a very unique experience. It's the same ingredients, but you're making something completely different, which is cool. I do have my concerns about draft. I, like you, Charmer, are exceptionally into limited play. There's no secrets there. You and I are going to draft the living hell out of this game. There's obviously no contest there. It's going to happen. I am a little bit weary about how things are going to break down. So let me explain to people how the draft process works. A draft pod of 8 people, right?
Yep.
8 people, 3 packs per person, sealed. However, here's where the standard fare kind of deviates, or how Star Wars U deviates from what is, understood as a standard procedure of drafting. You will start the game, the draft, by opening all 3 packs and not looking at anything except the first card, which is the leader card. You're going to take all 3 leaders out. You're going to put your 3 packs, which are already opened and unsearched, face down in front of you. You're going to draft a leader, pass the 2 to the left, draft a leader. To the right.
To the right. Yep.
That's weird.
For leader, well, it's because you do leaders right, and then pack is left, right, left.
So you're gonna have you're gonna open 3 packs. Every pack is seated such that the first card facing you will be a leader. You peel that away. The card behind it will be a base, so you'll be able to see the base. But this is what
the common base. So this is the other real quick. If you're coming from like Flesh and Blood, the bases are treated like the tokens in Flesh and Blood. So bases, you do not draft the common bases anyway. You do not draft them, and you can use any of the common bases you want afterwards. But the way the packs are designed, you have your leader, and then there's your common base, and so that's how you won't see the rest of the pack. So you just take the leader out, and then at the end you can trade your tokens around and whatever. Also, the common bases are 2-sided. It's always a base on one side and some sort of token on the other. So an experience token, a shield token, or whatever.
So the other part is once the leaders are passed 3 times, and you will have 3 leaders at your disposal. Then comes the draft portion, which is pick a card or take the token out, then pick a card, go left, pick a card, go left, and then the new pack, same thing, but you're going right and left. So then you have the standard procedure. Here is my little quarrel with this. It's not that the format and the way that it's executed worries me, because that's how you do it, and a game with unique rules will have to adapt to make sure, like Flesh and Blood, for example, it's unique in how that works. What I worry about, Charmer, are the galactic a-holes who are going to try to scam by searching the packs so they know more or less what leader to take, because they know that, or they'll be like, they'll open their pack and then they'll be like, oh, I should draft this pack first because I want this card with this leader. So all I'm going to say is, if you are caught and I catch you, or you are caught, or you're somebody who is going to cheat at this, you are a grade A wholesale free range organic a-hole. That is what I'm going to say. And I get it. And I know it's like, Flake, but you just went on a little vacation to clear your mind. My mind is so clear, so damn clear. I can see Order 67. That's how clear my mind is right now. I can see it developing, because Order 67 is going to be, if I catch someone trying to cheat at my draft table, you will be put on full blast, my friends. So don't do that. But that is my one concern. But again, that falls not on the structure or the rules or how to execute a draft, more so on the scum and villainy that might attend said drafts.
So there are some interesting bits here. One, I think for higher level events, they will likely have packs pre-opened so that you can just have the pool of leaders handed to you. And I honestly don't even think that is that difficult to do. So on the actual stream, one of the devs opened their pack in such a way where you just open the top, and then because the leader is the very first card, he just slid the leader out, and then everything else was still contained in the pack. And I hope that players over time learn how to do that, because my biggest concern when I heard this was that if you're taking the entire pack out instead of just sliding the leader out, I'm afraid people are going to end up mixing up their packs or their pools, because we've all been at that draft where somebody ends up with the wrong number of cards, and that's with one pack at a time open. So me thinking about like 3 open piles on a table gave me anxiety, because like, how do you backtrack that? How do you sort that mess out? That's the part that gave me like heart palpitations, was like, we can't get through one pack at a time sometimes, and you want all 3 open. So I do hope people adopt you kind of open the top of the pack to see where the leader is, and then you just take your finger and you slide the leader out, because then nobody's looking at packs anyway, but also your actual packs are still kind of self-contained, and you don't have to worry about your pools being mixed up. Hopefully.
Yeah, but
I'm trying to be optimistic.
No, the optimism part I get, and I will also be on that train for sure. But I have also sat at tables like, with multiple, national champions and pro tour players and such at a draft table drafting Flesh and Blood, where at a certain point somebody's like, wait a second, is this my pile? Is this yours? How many cards do you have? What's it? Like, it happens. It will happen.
Yeah.
So what I would probably recommend is just be vigilant when you're at that table. Don't go out there on this witch hunt looking for cheaters. Like, that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is just, make sure that your yard is taken care of. And yeah, because I saw that too, where they like, you open it kind of like the top end, like a bag of chips, you just slide the thing out and you're good to go. But not everybody has that kind of dexterity or gentle approach. Some of them are freaking rancors where they tear this shit open and they're just like, and they go. And like, I know how horny some people are for opening packs, where the first thing they do when they open it is they go straight to the back to see where that rare card is, and they go from there. I totally get it. So take this as a call to peace at the draft table. Take your time. There's a lot of moving pieces in this, Charmer. So we gotta make sure that people approach this delicately.
And that leads to the next part, which is very unique about this. Leader cards are obviously double-sided, right? You've got your epic action side and then the unit side. So that means during that very first part where you are drafting leaders, right? Your 3 leaders, that's all done face up. And I felt like that was very interesting, because that changes the draft dynamic when you go to the face down packs part, because there's still some level of known information, because you're going to know what 3 leaders have. And then that also then begs the strategy of like, do I try to draft 3 leaders that are all different aspects so that I can be open during the face down? Or, during the live stream, there was one person who had, 3 cunning leaders, and like 2 of them were villainy. And so it was basically, everyone was like, all right, well, clearly that person is on the cunning, likely villainy game plan. And so then it becomes, do I hate draft things because I know what they're playing? Or do I stay out of it because I know that stuff's not going to be passed to me? Right. So the drafting of the leaders face up, I think, is going to add a very interesting element just to the process in general.
You're spot on there. Anytime that there's that kind of, anytime extra information is available, that is just another way for you to potentially use it to your advantage. You're right, because if I'm passing left and I see that the person on my left, like you said, has 3 villainy hero leaders, or there's a good chance that if it's like, well, I can pull another so common, or I can just hate draft the card that they are most likely to take and play. I've done that before. I've done it in Flesh and Blood. But the difference there is that when you're doing that in Flesh and Blood, you're doing it off of a premonition that the person to your side, to your left or your right, is drafting a certain way. And I get it in that regard. Like, you're not wrong. That it's pretty easy to discern in Flesh and Blood if you're paying attention and you're skilled in that regard. But when things are face up, you're like, there's no secrets. So that is something that you need to refine as well, is decision making in terms of is the card I'm drafting more valuable to me in my deck, or is the card I'm drafting more valuable to me not being in their deck? Yeah. And that is something you have to keep in mind.
There's also the fun mind game part too, right? So I love the idea of like, all right, if I go into a draft and I know, because I'm a homer or whatever, like I want to force Sabine, right? So like, let's say that's my mindset, and I open the common Sabine. Well, if I take that and then the next 2 leaders I draft are both like cunning villainy, like maybe I take a couple of, Boba Fett's or whatever. Now the person to the left of me is going to see me on like 2 leaders of one aspect and then like one offshoot. And now if you're trying to put me on drafting something, which is it? You know what I mean? Like, I just love that there's that level of like face up information. And it's going to change things. This is already, I think, a pretty wide open format, just because, again, the way the aspects work in the tax, you're not as hosed if you don't get the cards you need. So I already love that about this game. But when I saw that they were doing the leaders face up, that really opens some things up. Now, other things worth noting about the process. Common bases, as we said before, are treated like tokens in Flesh and Blood, so you can use any common base. Rare bases show up in the pack and you do draft those. Those are a drafted card. So the way that the deck construction works is you make a minimum of a 30 card deck. You will end up drafting a total of 42 cards because of your 3 leaders. That rounds out to your 45 cards total. So they were basically saying like most players will have 42 playable cards unless you've drafted a rare base. Then it'll be 41 playable cards because your base is optional whether you're using that or a common one. So that means that your deck construction also does allow for a hefty amount of hate drafting if you're going to end up with like 12 extra cards at the end.
Well, hate drafting sometimes is like you'll be drafting Magic and you'll be like, I'm just going to take this because I don't want the player of this color, wherever they may be, to have it. But sometimes you're just in a situation where now you absolutely know what is on your left or on your right, and you know whether the card you're giving them will have significance or not, or to what degree of significance they may have. I feel like the best opportunity or the best option for you to do that, like when you're drafting, is you have like, if I'm drafting leaders, I'm drafting to stay as open as possible, and because that limits the information that you're giving your opponent. They're no longer going to be able to sort of paint you into a corner by drafting a certain way. And it's not just that. It's like I've been to places where people will kind of like recognize me and play cards against me. So it goes 2 ways. They'll either be very nice to me or they'll just want to kick the crap out of me. Like I've played Commander games where I've lasted 3 turns or like 1 turn cycle around because there's like, oh, that's Flake. Let's get Flake. And it's like, all right, sure. So to me, I'm conditioned to insulate myself against targeted hate in that regard, So if I'm drafting leaders, I'm drafting a heroism leader, a villainy leader. I'm going to try to keep the colors as splashed as possible. I don't want anybody to pass cards to me and say, I'm taking this card because you have to play cards of this thing. I'm not going to pigeonhole myself that way.
Now, there is one other reason that I brought this up, because they talked about when you do your draft, like that becomes your pool. And unlike Flesh and Blood, where you have to then register a leader, they mentioned that you will be able to essentially change your deck around between rounds as long as it's within your pool. So if you do stay open with your leaders, and then you also stay open or you draft cards you're willing to pay the aspect tax on, you could start with, a Sabine deck and then transition to a Thrawn deck or something, right? It seems very wild to do that, but not impossible, depending on how specific you want to be. And so I think staying open is still likely going to be the right play. But I do also like the idea of, again, on the stream, the person who is like, all right, well, I'm very clearly cunning and very likely cunning villainy. And so the question then becomes like, do you hate draft all my stuff and make your deck worse? Or do you just pass it to me knowing that I'm going to be forcing it, but then give me that benefit, right? Like you're kind of challenging the table.
But both sound so lovely.
Right? Like
both sound so good. Boy. All this to say, dude, is like I'm just super hyped about this. And we are going to get to mess around sooner than later, which is awesome to not fully talk about. So all this to say,
because the game comes out this year. That's totally what we're referencing.
That is all we're talking about.
That is it.
Okay, so I will say this then, Charmer. I'll ask you a question. Let's say you are drafting leaders, right? And you've got me to your right. You've got Doa to your left. You just made the worst, back-to-back-to-back puns you'll ever make, which Doa and I are just done with you. You've drafted Sabine, and then Doa and I look at you and say, we don't care about winning. We just care about you losing. And then we just hate draft every single card that you want. What do you say about that?
I say that sounds like it's a day that ends in Y. But also, I would say I have a bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about it.
Quiet.
All right, it is the Bad Feeling Mailbag. Again, would you want to? I don't know I'm out of practice, Charmer. I'm so out of practice. I haven't recorded anything, published anything, done anything in a solid 2.5, 3 weeks. I feel great, but still, I got to get back on the wagon, as it were. But if you want to submit a question, you can do so by emailing us at wamparadiopodcast@gmail.com. You could tweet at Wampa Radio. You could tweet me at Watch Flake or this doofus at ThatCharm3R and send us your questions, because we've got some questions. And I want to open up with a wonderful letter that was sent to us by Terrence Dorman, who said some very kind things about the show. Big fan of the show. The show was... This is what I love to hear, by the way, when that Terrence got into the show by recommendation from a friend of theirs. So word of mouth is happening, and we really appreciate that. So again, if you like the show, please tell a friend. It does go the long way. But they were talking about sequel characters showing up in the game, and there was a concern even, that one Babu Freak was not mentioned. And Babu, first of all, C-3PO's oldest friend, was not mentioned, and Babu Freak is just one hell of a character. In my opinion, out of all of the sequel characters, like the fringe characters, Babu's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I'll just be honest. I let people down. I did it once again, the same way that I had to apologize to an entire
species, the Quarren
species.
To the
I need to
Quarren
apologize
people.
to Babu Freak, because I should have known better. That should have been the go-to. Babu Freak is amazing.
He is.
He is freaking amazing. That's what he is.
No Charmer, no Squeezy. No, baby, no Squeezy. What a good character. Just so good. That wasn't Babu Freak. It's one of his people, but still. Yeah, Babu. I don't know why we did not say him, but what would a Babu Freak card look like to you? To me, it's like a 1-drop 1/1 that any card that has an upgrade gets an additional +1/+1. That's the way I see it.
So I think that he should be like a 2 or a 3, and he should still be a 1/1, but on attack, he removes damage from a friendly unit, kind of like the medical droid. But then on play, he can return an upgrade from the discard to your hand.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Or he can look at the top 5 cards of your deck and find you an upgrade, and then you draw it. Something like that, right? Where he finds upgrades, but he also does repairs.
It's an upgrade-related card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Upgrades and repairs.
Yeah, so there you go, Terrence. And the way that I responded to this email, by the way, which was basically I told Terrence that thanks, first of all, but also that I would put you two donkeys under the spotlight to answer for these crimes. So Doa cowardly didn't show up.
That's the reason he's not here this week, by the way.
The Babu Freak reckoning is not happening, but it is what it is.
I'm used to apologizing on this podcast.
Yeah, that's all you do, man. Yeah. To the Quarren people, to the freaky people. All right. So we do have an actual question, though, Charmer. So what is that question?
All right. So it's technically a pair, both from Alex Squiggles on Twitter at SnugglesMcSquig, which is just fantastic.
We all would also like to apologize to the McSquig people.
So Alex first says, now that a lot of the art has been spoiled, what are the top cards you want in hyperspace? Also, what are you planning on doing first, whether that's deck building, just open stuff, draft, etc.? And then as a follow-up to that, Alex also said, are there any card designs that have been revealed that have surprised you, whether due to theme or uniqueness of design?
So I'll start with the hyperspace part. I think Aggression, the legendary event Aggression that has like Kylo Ren getting angry, I think that's definitely one. I would really like, to me, it's gonna, but the answer will always be space units. It's always going to be ships. I think that if I want a hyperspace version of a card, it's going to be like the Millennium Falcon. It's going to be an X-Wing. It's going to be Home One. I am such a loser when it comes to spaceships and space battles. I love them to death. It is partially why Rogue One to me is the best Star Wars movie, is because the space battle is absolutely incredible. It is just, I want to see more of that. So having cards like a Star Destroyer, the Redemption, whatever, in hyperspace version, that is, to me, that's what I want to see more than anything.
Yeah, I am for the most part with you. So my kind of like multifaceted answer is, one, any of my favorite characters. Like obviously I want them, right? So I want the Sabines and hyperspace and Jyn Erso, and if they're leader units, obviously I'm going to want the showcase. But like if I had to, pick a card, just a singular card, I would pick Chimera, because again, ship in space, but also like to me that's like the ship, and then if I was forced to pick a ground unit, if we go away from like, okay, you obviously want the ships to be your hyperspace, the ground unit that I would want right now is the Darth Vader that was just revealed.
Yeah, that's a great looking card.
His art is fantastic, and then with him like doing the point thing and him having ambush, it would just kind of look like I've showed up on the scene with my entourage. It would like be a further embodiment of what that card is meant to do. So,
dude, it looks like it's like he's Beyonce, and you have like Kelly Rowland behind her. Yeah, like this is like legitimately like, if you look at that card, this is the part of Bye 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 where Justin Timberlake is doing this thing where the Joey Fatone and Chris Kirkpatrick are in the back, like just filling shoes. Like that's all they do. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. I tend to agree. I think that the Darth Vader card, which we didn't get to because I wasn't on that episode, man, what a beast of a card. So I think that the other one for me, like looking at cards like Vanguard Ace, that looks pretty rad. There's so many wicked cool cards, but if I was gonna pick like a ground unit, I don't even know, man. Like to me, it just seems like Vader. It's freaking Vader. Yeah, that's about it. There is a secondary question from Alex asking, are there any card designs that have revealed that are surprised you in terms of their uniqueness of their design? Honestly, I think that the one thing about Star Wars Unlimited is that the uniqueness of the game and the way that the rules kind of put together, it's like nobody's discovering new elements in the periodic table, but people are combining them in new ways to make flashy stuff. And I kind of think that that's what Star Wars Unlimited is doing. And I'll be completely honest with you, there's nothing about this game that blows me away in terms of innovation. What I think it does is it takes the best parts of a lot of other games and combines them in this unique way that is just better than the sum of its parts. Because a lot of the keywords that the combat system, the whatever, I think is really cool and interesting. Even leaders and leader abilities, like those have existed in other card games. Gwent has been playing with leader abilities forever, like one-time leader abilities. It's been a thing. It's just existed for since that game came out in like 2014 or 15 or whatever. Like it's just been there. That said, all this to say, is there anything that's like blowing me away? No. Is there anything that's surprising me? I'd say that the surprising aspect is how cleanly and awesome these ingredients come together and create this delicious dish. But there's, like if we're going to be completely honest here, there's nothing in terms of the mechanics of the game that are groundbreaking.
Yeah, I would say I largely agree with that. I don't think there's anything that is surprising me or, anything to that degree. When I read this, the one thing that kind of like jumped out at me as a potential answer, so I'll just go with it, is I was a little surprised when we got the reveal for redemption. Not because it heals your base, but because it does the self-harm thing to do it. Like, I would not, if you had just like in a vacuum said like, hey, do you think redemption is going to have any sort of like a self-harm health-based synergy with like grit or whatever, I would have said no, but it kind of does, right? Obviously it's got the when played, you can heal a bunch of stuff at the expense of its own health, but I've already, again, kind of like earmarked that card because it can self-harm in the future. If we ever get an upgrade that says like the attached unit gains grit or whatever, then suddenly redemption could be part of some like game ending combo, right? So that one kind of jumped out to me, but that, again, I'm not surprised that it does healing. I'm not surprised it has Sentinel. It was a bit of a surprise that the way you do the healing is by kind of blowing the ship up.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do. This is war, man. Yeah, it's a star war, frankly. All right, so thank you so much, Alex, for the submission to the Bad Feeling Mailbag. And if you'd like to get your questions in again, you can email us at wamparadiopodcast@gmail.com, at Wampa Radio on Twitter, at WatchFlake on Twitter, at ThatCharm3R on Twitter, at GGDOA on Twitter. That's where you can get us. Or on Discord, you can just sort of shoot us a message or do whatever. It's good to be back. I'm happy to be back, Charmer. I'm happy that we can say the game comes out in this year. The game comes out in, we're dare I say, a few weeks. I mean, a few can be 8, Yeah,
I was going to say, we're 5 days away from the 2-month mark.
Yeah, we're close, dude. So, like, we are rapidly approaching that launch day. Keep your ears and your earballs and your eyeballs on this channel because we are going to have some cool stuff to show you down the line. We're working on some cool stuff that we can't necessarily talk about, but there's some wicked cool things happening in the short term. Charmer, my man, it has been an episode, and I will say this: it is good to be back. And I will say to you all, thank you so much for the kind words and for listening to Wampa Radio. If you want to help us out, you can give us a 5-star review wherever you do so. Follow us, subscribe to the channels, do all that jam. It goes miles for us. Thank you very much. We will see you next week on Wampa Radio. Charmer, hit us with the fattest of wisdoms.
May the Force be with you.